Welcome to the June meeting of Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm Flannery Winchester, CCL's Vice President of Communications, and I'm your host for the meeting this month. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat or in the Q&A, and so that we can welcome each other. And let us know where you're joining from, how many folks are there with you, and we'll drop a link in the chat that you can use to log your attendance today so that we officially know you were here with us. So thank you for being with us on the call this month. And before we get started with our planned agenda, I do want to take a minute just to acknowledge the terrible events in Minnesota this morning, where two state lawmakers and their spouses were shot, and one lawmaker and her husband were killed in what appears to be politically motivated shootings. So our hearts go out to the families and their loved ones, and also to all of our Minnesota volunteers who might have known these lawmakers through their local advocacy work and might be feeling this hit close to home today. Violence is, of course, never the answer. And this kind of tragedy, I think, underscores just how important it is for us to demonstrate the right way to make our voices heard in the political system, which is through respectful dialogue. Now, today we are lucky to have with us on the call the chairs of the Citizens Climate Lobby and Citizens Climate Education governing boards. They have an announcement to share with us about CCL's leadership. So I will go ahead and hand it right over to Sandy Kirtland Turner to share more about how the boards work together to guide CCL, and then we'll hear from Bill Blancato with that leadership update. So Sandy?
Hello, thanks, Flannery. It's great to join so many CCLers on today's national call. I don't get to join these calls very often. Saturday mornings are usually really hectic for me. I'm a mom with 4 young kids, ages 8 and under. But actually, my time with CCL started back in 2007 on Coronado Island in San Diego, and I was attending what must have been one of the very first CCL national calls then. I've been a CCL volunteer since I was finishing my PhD in oceanography and climate science at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego. And I've stayed with CCL ever since. And I joined the CCE Board of Directors in 2015 and stepped into the role of chair of the board in 2023. So I have more appreciation for CCL volunteers now than I have at any time really in the past 18 years, because it's really never been more clear to me that the CCL model is what we need ultimately to win on climate change, but also to engage individuals to empower empower individuals, to engage in the political process, even and especially when it feels so challenging, as I think events today indicate. So thank you. Thank you very much for all you do and for your commitment. So the CCE and the CCL boards are distinct because we have separate 501c3 and 501c4 statuses, but we act jointly as the governing body for our organization. So today I'm here representing the CCE board along with Bill from CCL. So I'll turn it over to him.
Unmute. Thanks, Andy. Hey, everybody, I'm Bill Blancato. I've been a CCL volunteer since 2013. In 2014, I helped start the second chapter in North Carolina, and I've worn several hats in CCL: group leader, regional coordinator, state coordinator, liaison. Last year, I joined the CCE board, and earlier this year, I transitioned to the CCL board and became chair of the CCL board on June 1. The leadership update I want to share with you is that Rachel Carestas, our current executive director, has notified us that she's going to resign her position effective July 15. Together with Sandy and the other board members, we've offered Ricky Bradley, our VP of Field Operations, the role of interim executive director, and I'm happy to report that Ricky has accepted that offer, and he'll officially assume the role on July 16. Rachel and those of us on the boards are working together to ensure a smooth transition with Ricky. Rachel came into her role at Citizens Climate at a pivotal time for the organization. She made several key moves in consultation with the board that put the organization on a path toward long-term success and effectiveness. I'm grateful to Rachel for her efforts, and I'm excited about where Ricky's leadership can take us from here. He's been with the organization for over 13 years as a volunteer and staff member, and he's a perfect person to take over from Rachel next month and carry our mission forward. Ricky, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Bill, and thank you so much, Sandy, as well, not just for the warm welcome today, but for your ongoing leadership and your commitment to both CCE and CCL. I am deeply honored by this opportunity. For those of you who don't know me or haven't had a chance to get to know you, as Bill mentioned, I've been a part of CCL for quite a while. I started as a volunteer in January of 2012. And something that might resonate with a lot of you, I held my first chapter meeting the following month at my kitchen table with my spouse and one other person. I was so excited that that one other person showed up for that meeting. After volunteering full time for 2 years, former Executive Director Mark Reynolds invited me to join the CCL staff in 2014. And since then, I've worn a lot of hats. I've helped relaunch our main website, started Citizens Climate University, was our effort to scale and our training and education nationwide, and created CCL Community. But later, I was also had the opportunity to become the regional coordinator for Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma. And those are my favorite memories of CCL, coming from those summer days, traveling those states with Susan Adams, Peter Brand, and Brett Cease in cars that had little or no AC, and just staying with volunteers or wherever we could find a bed sometimes. Those are the moments that I'll always hold dear to myself. In 2018, Madeline Parra gave me the opportunity to become the director of IT. And then earlier or late last year, when Brett decided to step away as VP of operations, Rachel asked me to step in and really build on the incredible foundation that Brett and our regional directors had built. The words were barely out of her mouth before I said yes. So I'm excited for this opportunity. Before CCL, I worked at HSBC, Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. And for them, I was leading strategic planning and implementation efforts. But from the moment I found CCL, I knew I'd found my place. I was then, and I still am, moved by CCL founder Marshall Saunders' vision that respectful, persistent, nonpartisan advocacy will move policymakers and others, even when the odds seem long. I fully realize that what makes CCL possible isn't just the strategy, it's the people, it's us, it's the relationships we built together. The power of CCL comes from all of us. It's volunteers, staff, donors, and our board who show up again and again with all of us with a clarity of purpose and a lot of passion. I know that. So as I step into this new role, I welcome your thoughts and questions and ideas, so please don't hesitate to reach out. But for now, we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to pass it back over to Flannery to get us going for today.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you, Sandy and Bill. And congratulations, Ricky. Thanks for all the years you've already put into this work and all the ways you're going to help us move it forward from here. All right, so folks, I will invite you to please share any of your CCL personal wins or chapter successes in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll ask Ricky to read some of those comments aloud in a few minutes after I share our national highlights. So, at the national level, we've been engaging heavily in what is really the main event in Congress, which is this budget bill that could dramatically roll back the clean energy tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act, which were passed in 2022. So that's been the big thing that's been going on since our last meeting. And the process around this bill has been moving very quickly this last month. So I'm just going to run through what has happened since our last meeting, which was on May 10th. So on May 12th, the House Ways and Means Committee introduced its portion of this big budget bill. And this is the committee that we were watching and lobbying most closely throughout the spring to try to protect the clean energy tax credits from repeal. So the worst outcome from this committee would have been just outright repeal of all the clean energy tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act. So this committee, they didn't outright repeal them, so that's good. But the Ways and Means Committee did propose major changes that would be dismal for climate and clean energy. So they proposed ending tax credits for home energy efficiency, heat pumps, rooftop solar, batteries, all by the end of this year, and very quickly phasing out other tax credits. And then the committee passed its portion of the budget bill on May 14th. So just a couple of days after they published their text. So after that committee vote, the next thing coming up was a vote from the full House. So we we CCL, all of y'all on this call, mobilized before that House vote. So we sent messages to House Republicans asking for specific changes to what the Ways and Means Committee passed. We also started sending messages to Senate Republicans, laying the groundwork for the Senate to preserve their tax credits in their version of the bill. So that was about a span of about a week, but the partisan pressure in a process like budget reconciliation is huge. And ultimately, the House vote happened quickly on May 22nd, and it fell almost entirely along party lines. So the House did pass its version of the budget bill, passed the full House, with those drastic cuts to the tax credits. So that was tough to see. But still, many Republicans over the last period of years have changed how they talk about climate and clean energy. And during this process specifically, dozens of Republicans spoke up about the value of these clean energy tax credits. So we're seeing our nonpartisan engagement with Congress and our steady presence shift the terrain for these policy conversations. And that's helpful to keep in mind, because after this House vote, the process moved over to the Senate. So that's where we are now. In the last couple of weeks, we've been mobilizing to encourage the Senate to protect these tax credits in their version of the bill. Because remember, for anything to become law, it has to go through both chambers of Congress. They have to pass the same version of the bill for it to go to the president's desk for a signature. So we've been generating messages to senators, as that's one of our sort of standby actions that we take. But we have also ramped things up with a special focus on local media. So we set a goal of 300 media hits by today's call. And last I checked, y'all had blown past that with 371 media hits in the last couple of weeks. So that's fantastic. Round of applause for everybody for taking that discussion public in your local media, because we know that members of Congress really pay close attention to that. Also, our government affairs team has been working with our volunteer liaisons to schedule and hold targeted lobby meetings with members of the Senate Finance Committee. So senators who sit on this key committee that has jurisdiction over the tax credits. We've been doing some targeted lobbying there. So that was a lot. I'll forgive you if you missed any of those steps along the way these last few weeks, because it truly has been a hectic time, and we're still in the midst of it. So what's next after all of this? The next step is that the Senate Finance Committee will release their portion of the Senate bill. So just like the House committees did their thing, now the Senate committees are doing theirs. And in the House, it was the Ways and Means Committee that dealt with the tax credits and that we were watching and lobbying closely. The Senate counterpart is the Senate Finance Committee. So their portion of the bill could be out as soon as Monday. And the reporting that we're seeing and things that we're hearing from the Hill suggests that the Senate version of the bill may not cut the tax credits as deeply as the House version. So in other words, it looks like the Senate could do a better job of preserving the tax credits than the House did in their version. But that said, any rollback of clean energy tax credits is not ideal. We would rather see the climate measures from the Inflation Reduction Act stay intact. So even if the Senate version is better than the House version, as an organization, we're still not going to endorse this bill or ask members to vote for it. We will just continue to advocate for keeping those clean energy tax credits in the bill as much as possible and protecting those climate measures. And I do think it's helpful to remember that that a lot of rhetoric on the campaign trail in the campaign last fall, coming from Republican members of Congress or hopefuls, was to completely get rid of the Inflation Reduction Act and its climate measures. So the fact that now they're trying to slice and dice parts of it rather than just toss the whole thing out is really a testament to the defense work that we've been doing all along. And another thing to keep in mind, just as we go through the next steps here, it's not a guarantee that Republicans will be able to reach consensus on this bill and have enough votes to pass it. And it's certainly not a guarantee that they'll be able to do so in the next couple of weeks, as they are aiming for. So there was some reporting from E&E News on Monday that said, quote, there are enough Senate Republicans keen on changing the House language to make a difference. So we hope to see our advocacy help those Senate Republicans continue to hold the line on these climate and clean energy measures, and we will keep working on this as long as it takes through our lobby day on Capitol Hill next month and beyond. All right, so that's what's been going on at the national level. And now we'll hear some of your local updates, local wins. Ricky, can I ask you to holler out some of what you're seeing in the Q&A or the chat?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Flannery. Let's see. We've got Asher saying like new leadership in his local chapter in Southwest Florida with new group leaders and volunteers, and past ones are stepping up, so some turning over, but that's a good thing. So that's great. Thanks. Glad to hear that. Let's see. CCL Huntsville, like 2 first-time attendees. That's great. And they got their first op-ed published this month as well. So it's great for CCL Huntsville. Gwen Hansen reports couple of previous high school students who are now of their college break are back to attend their meeting today. So that's great to see. And Alex, we'll touch on the last one here from Alex so that we can get to our great guest speaker here. But Alex says that she got 3 letters of support from Montana County Commissioners in support of keeping the clean energy tax credits. And they used our text and our information verbatim, and she has sent them along to the senator who is on the Senate Finance Committee, and hopefully those letters will persuade them, especially since one is the county where the local coal plant is. They say they want batteries, solar, and nuclear. So thank you so much, Alex, for that. Flannery, I will turn it back to you. Great stories.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Ricky. And thank you, everybody, for everything that you are doing out in the field. All right, now we will turn to our featured speaker for this month's meeting. I'm happy to welcome CCL's research manager, Dana Nuccitelli. For those of you who don't know Dana, he is an environmental scientist and climate journalist who has written for Skeptical Science, The Guardian, and Yale Climate Connections, and his writing has earned him the Seal Environmental Journalism Award in 2022. And he is here today to share some fresh analysis about why protecting the Inflation Reduction Act's clean energy tax credits is a huge opportunity for us in this country. Keeping these credits in place means lower energy bills, more clean power, greater energy security, hundreds of thousands of good jobs across the country. But the flip side, as Dana explained in a recent article for Yale Climate Connections, if Congress takes away these clean energy tax credits, we'll be in for some negative impacts. And so that's what he's going to make sure we understand today. So without further ado, over to you, Dana.
All right, thanks, Flannery. Hey, everybody. So, yeah, we're going to go pretty fast today, but if you want to come back and check out the slides, we've got a short URL here, cclusa.org/IRA-repeal. So there have been about 8 expert analyses and reports on what repealing the various clean energy tax credits would do. So I'm going to go through those and summarize them. We had 3 looking at the entirety of the House budget bill at Princeton, Rhodium, and Energy Innovation. And then 5 others looked just at the clean electricity tax credits that we've been focusing a lot on. Those are Aurora, RFF, Brattle, NERA, and SEIA. And so I went through and on the CCL blog, which you can get to at cclusa.org/blog, I categorized those into 4 categories of consequences of repealing the tax credits. And those are, it would be a de facto electricity and gas tax. It would imperil American manufacturing, jobs, and economic growth, reduce energy security, and result in more pollution and worsened health. And then as Flannery mentioned, over on Yale, I kind of expanded on that, looked at 10 individual ways that the bill would impact Americans adversely. And so that's what we're going to go through today. We're going to do 10 impacts in 10 minutes. So buckle up, we're going to go fast. But again, you can look at the recording if you want to go slower, look at the slides, the CCL blog, the Yale article, and also you can ask questions over on the Nerd Corner. So let's get into it. Number 1, repealing the tax credits would be a de facto gas tax. And I lead off with this one because politicians are always scared of high gas prices because Americans really hate them. And so I think that's a pretty persuasive point to make. The reason that would be the case is that if the electric vehicle tax credits are repealed, then we're going to see a lot fewer EVs on American roads. As you can see from that chart from Princeton, the estimates are that repealing the EV tax credits would mean about 7.4 million fewer EVs on American roads by 2030 and about 20 to 40 million fewer EVs on our roads by 2035. And so then if you look at the law of supply and demand, which we're going to come back to a lot today, if you have more cars burning gasoline in the 2030s, then you're going to have higher demand for gasoline, which means higher gasoline prices. So there were a couple of estimates from Rhodium and just recently from Energy Innovation, estimating that this repeal of the EV tax credit would cause gasoline prices to increase by between 3 and 25 cents per gallon, which is a pretty significant increase in gasoline prices. You can see a nice chart from Energy Innovation over here on the right. And then a secondary impact is that it's important to bear in mind that fueling an EV is much cheaper than fueling a gasoline car, on the order of $800 less per year for an average EV compared to an average gasoline car. And so if you have tens of millions of fewer Americans buying EVs, then you have tens of millions of fewer Americans making those savings on their annual fuel bills. And so if you put those all together, then overall repealing the EV tax credits would raise average American household vehicle fueling cost by an estimated about $40 to $200 per year. And impact number 2, it would also be a de facto electricity tax. And that's a problem. You can see our average US electricity prices here. You can see they were nice and flat over the past decade prior to the COVID pandemic. And then since the COVID pandemic, they've gone up very, very fast as a result of things like inflation and supply chains and whatnot. And they continue to go up and are expected to continue going up because we are entering this period of rapid power demand growth. You can see on this chart from Princeton, the prior 20 years, US power demand was pretty flat because we were doing a good job becoming more energy efficient. But then over the next couple of decades, that power demand is projected to go up very, very fast because we're seeing all these data centers, artificial intelligence, development, electrification of vehicles and buildings, more air conditioning use because temperatures are getting hotter. All these things are causing people to use more electricity. So the projection is we're going to see our power demand rise something like 5 to 10 times faster over the next decade as it has over the prior 2 decades. And if we get rid of our clean electricity tax credits, we're going to see only about half as much solar and wind deployed over the next decade, as you can see on this chart from Princeton here. And so again, that law of supply and demand, if you have this rapidly rising power demand and our power supply isn't rising fast enough to meet it, that's going to result in higher electricity rates. And so the estimates from the various reports are that household electricity bills are going to rise by between $46 and $160 per year over the next decade if the IRA clean electricity tax credits are repealed. And then impact number 3, the other kind of gas is going to get a de facto tax too. That's natural gas. Because again, we're seeing this rising power demand. If we have insufficient new clean energy deployments to meet that, then utilities are going to have to burn more gas. Again, supply and demand, if you have more demand for gas, then gas prices are going to rise. Rhodium estimated between 2 and 7% if these tax credits are repealed. So if you put all those de facto energy taxes all together, overall household energy costs would rise between about $1,000 and $3,000 over the next decade for an average American household. On top of that, the House proposed to repeal the tax credits and incentives for home efficiency, home electrification, rooftop solar would really get decimated, household battery storage. And so if households can't afford to make those transitions to become more efficient, get solar panels, become more electrified, then they're stuck paying those higher energy bills that they're going to be hit by. And you can see that projected rising household energy expenditures from this chart from the Princeton Repeat Report. Impact number 4, we risk falling behind China on artificial intelligence development, which is something that politicians across the political spectrum are very concerned about. So the reason that's a problem is that over the past several years, and especially last year, almost all of the new power generation we built was clean energy. Solar and batteries and wind were 94% of the new electric generation capacity that we built in the United States in 2024. And you can't just replace that by building more gas turbines because gas turbines are already facing years of delivery backlogs right now. And so they're just not available to meet that rising demand. And so if you get less new clean energy deployment because you're getting rid of the electricity tax credits, then you just get less energy deployment in general, which means everybody's left scrambling to meet their new demand, including including AI and their data centers. And AI and data center training and development, they require a lot of power. And so there's actually just an article the other day about all these technology companies asking members of Congress to extend the clean electricity tax credits so that they can meet their AI power demands. Number 5, reduced energy security and higher risk of blackouts. There's, a couple of example states are Texas and California have seen some power outages and blackouts in recent years. And that's been less of a problem over the past year because they've been able to deploy a lot of solar and batteries. A good example, just last month in May, Texas had this unseasonably early heat wave that they weren't really anticipating. They had a lot of gas power plants down for maintenance because sometimes you got to maintain your baseload power, and you usually do that when you're not expecting to need it, like in the spring. But then this unseasonable heat wave came, and so folks are worried, is Texas going to have a problem meeting power demand during this extreme heat wave? But it turned out they were just fine because they've deployed a lot of solar and batteries in Texas over the past couple years. Similar things are happening in California. And so those clean energy sources are really doing an important job in avoiding and reducing the risks of power outages. But if you get rid of the clean electricity tax credits, and then so you start building less and less new clean power like solar and batteries while that power demand is going up, then you get back into that situation where you're at risk of power outages if there's a big extreme weather event. Number 6, we've got imperiled domestic manufacturing. Everybody likes domestic manufacturing. Everybody talks about it. And we have seen this boom in clean energy domestic manufacturing over the past few years since the Inflation Reduction Act was passed. You can see it on this chart from the Clean Investment Monitor. Most of it has been batteries, EVs, and solar panels. But if you repeal the tax credits that are pushing the demand for that manufacturing, then that manufacturing goes away. Princeton's done a lot of work on this, talking about how if you repeal the EV tax credits, then suddenly all that demand for increased EVs goes away because you're selling fewer and fewer EVs over the next few years. And already we've got enough new EV and battery manufacturing capacity to meet that reduced demand by 2030. So you're not going to be building any new facilities. And in fact, the existing facilities might not have enough demand, and so they might have to reduce the output of existing battery and EV facilities. And if they're reducing the output, that means they're probably going to have to lay off workers. And that's another bad impact. In fact, that's impact number 7, lost jobs. So if you're reducing the need for our domestic manufacturing of EVs, solar panels, batteries, you're also reducing our deployment of clean energy, solar farms, wind farms, battery facilities. That means you're reducing the amount of manufacturing jobs and the amount of construction jobs that are needed. And so various reports estimated that if we repeal these EV and clean electricity tax credits, we're going to lose hundreds of thousands of jobs over the next decade. You can see a nice chart illustrating that from Energy Innovation over here on the right. And if you're losing manufacturing, you're losing jobs, you're also reducing economic growth, which is impact number 8. If you're reducing that, all that stuff that we're building, all that private investment that's going into all these new manufacturing and clean energy facilities, all those jobs that's giving workers good salaries, so they're spending that money throughout the economy. If you take all that stuff away, then that just means less money churning throughout the economy. Estimates are that our GDP in the United States would fall by more than $1 trillion if all these tax credits are repealed. And thus we're losing out on these new manufacturing and clean energy projects and all those new jobs as well. Impact number 9, you're going to get more pollution and worse health for Americans if you repeal the tax credits. Because you're deploying less clean power, you're deploying fewer EVs, which means you're burning more fossil fuels in power plants and in cars, which means more pollution from smokestacks and vehicle tailpipes, which means higher air pollution. And higher air pollution is, of course, bad for public health. Energy Innovation estimated that the result of this would be thousands of additional premature deaths over the next decade. You'd also get more cases of asthma and dementia and all kinds of adverse health impacts that research has connected to the breathing of more air pollution. And then finally, number 10, the one that we probably care about the most is that you're going to get more climate pollution, more greenhouse gas emissions. You can see that on this chart from energy or from Princeton. Basically, the less tax credits you have, the less clean energy you're deploying, the higher your greenhouse gas emissions are, because you're burning more fossil fuels. And so the estimates from the various reports that if we repeal these various tax credits, our emissions in the US will be just 20 to 30% below 2005 levels by 2030. You might remember our Paris commitments was to get our emissions 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. So we'd be roughly halfway short of our Paris commitments if we repeal the IRA and the associated clean electricity and energy tax credits. We get about 3 billion extra tons of carbon pollution in the atmosphere, which is equivalent to about 6 months of all US emissions. So you're basically adding an extra 6 months of emissions into the next 10 years during a time when we're supposed to be reducing our emissions as fast as possible. So that's just moving in the wrong direction. So that's our 10 consequences. It's a lot of stuff, but I'm sure you guys can digest that with no problem. And so, as Flannery mentioned, now we're moving on to the Senate. The Senate said a lot of good things that they plan to extend each one of the tax credits by some amount. We'll have to see what the details look like. But it sounds like they're going to do some things to improve the problems in the House version. As Flannery mentioned, we expect to see the text maybe on Monday night. So, in the meantime, now is a great time to be contacting your Republican senators and urging them to preserve as many of these important tax credits as possible for these 10 really good reasons. So I will stop there, and Flannery, I'm going to kick it back over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Dana. We better do everything we can to keep the tax credits then.
Good idea.
Clear takeaway. It's an uphill battle for sure, but it's worth engaging on. Okay, I think we have time for one question. I'll ask this from Dan. This was the first question I saw come in. If the bill goes through, what's the earliest that we would see the law take effect? So can you speak maybe to some of the, basically, I guess, the timeline of the tax credits going away if it is passed in the, like, as the House version?
Yeah, for the tax credits, it depends on the tax credit because they have varying timeframes over which they're phased out. The clean electricity tax credits would effectively be immediately phased out because of some of the poison pill language that's in there. The household tax credits for things like household efficiency and electrification generally get phased out by the end of this year. Most of the EV tax credits too. A couple of them got a longer runway, like nuclear power got a little bit longer, and carbon capture and storage and things like that. But for the most part, pretty quickly they get phased out.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. That is, I think, all the time we have for live questions. But folks, thank you for the other questions you've put in. Dana will hit you up in the chat or the Q&A and take a look at these other couple questions. Dana, we've gotten several requests for can people share your presentation with their member of Congress or with their with their contacts in the office. So we might clip this out and make that available for folks.
Yeah, and people can get a copy of the slides by going to File, Download, Microsoft PowerPoint.
Okay, I think Ricky's dropped a link in the chat so folks can get those. Awesome. Okay, thank you, Dana. All right, now let's take a look at the actions that you can be working on this month, and I'll go ahead and preview. We will take an action together here in a few minutes to reach out to Republican senators about, oh no, sorry. No, we won't, but we have an action available for you. If you want to write to your senators and you have Republican senators about everything that Dana just talked about, we have a live action. We can drop that in the chat. Okay, so actions you can be working on this month. We have a grass tops engagement action in our June action sheet to engage trusted messengers. So we're asking you to go to the respected local voices in your community. So business leaders, community figures, subject matter experts, your mayor, your city council members. And we want you to help get those folks to speak up in support of keeping the clean energy tax credits. So they could write an endorsement letter, they could maybe join your lobby meeting coming up later this summer, they could do some public media, maybe they're willing to have their name on an op-ed. So there's lots of ideas and more guidance on how to do this in the June action sheet. So that is something we'd like you to focus on this month. We also have a media action this month. We would like you to write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper urging senators to protect the clean energy tax credits. So if you've been around CCL for any amount of time, you've probably been introduced to the LTE skills before, but we've got more tips and resources on how to do this in the June action sheet. But we're gonna really run through the tape on this one. So keep working on your local media, keep bringing that conversation out in that public space there, because we know members of Congress really pay attention to that. All right. Also in the June action sheet, we have a few communication exercises. So one is a practice conversation about talking about clean energy permitting reform. And then another exercise is a reflection about CCL's core values. So definitely take some time to look at those on the action sheet and go through those with folks in your chapter, or just take a look at them yourself. And speaking of permitting reform, this is our, there's a Contact Congress action on the action sheet this month to reach out to members of Congress about permitting reform. And so this is going to be our live action on the call today that we are going to take a few minutes to do together. So why are we writing to Congress about permitting reform? Because if we want to meet our climate goals, we must build clean energy faster than we currently are. And so reforming the permitting process is going to help us speed up good projects, stop harmful ones, and ensure that communities have a real say along the way. And let's see, if we could go ahead and skip to the next slide so that we can see that short link there. Awesome. Or yeah, perfect. So people can be pulling up this short link here. So we helped build a lot of momentum for bipartisan permitting reform in the last Congress, and lawmakers need to hear from us to keep this conversation moving. We need to keep it going in a productive bipartisan way. And so go ahead and pull up this link. This is what we're going to do together today. cclusa.org/live-action. So you can pull that up on your phone or your tablet or your laptop, and we'll take 3 minutes to send our messages. And feel free to personalize the template message that you'll find in that tool, because personalized messages have the greatest impact. And so this action also is for members of Congress of any party. So if you're represented by Republicans or Democrats, everybody can take this action. Just drop another link in the chat for anybody who wants to take an action related to protecting the clean energy tax credits. You can write to Republican senators at the link I just dropped in the chat. So we've had that action out there for a while, so a lot of you will have already done it, and many of you are in states where you don't have a Republican senator. But if anybody's new on the call or hasn't sent a message to your Republican senators about the tax credits, that link for that action is also in the chat. All right. So last but not least, an action that we would love for you to take this month is to plan to attend our summer conference and lobby day in DC. So I'm going to toss it back to Ricky to share some perspective on this special annual event. Ricky?
Thank you, Flannery. And for those who are trying to do the action, just to let you know, for whatever reason, the button got put up in the upper right corner of that action. Just click the preview button and that should get you to the next page to send your messages. So sorry about that. So as Flannery mentioned, if you've managed to avoid our email invitations or no one yet has talked to you to personally invite you to attend, I'd love for you to know that I want you all to join us in Washington, D.C. for our summer conference and lobby day. This event is more than just a CCL tradition. It is a statement or a testament to the power of our democracy. When 1,000 everyday citizens like us show up on Capitol Hill, that we're all united by purpose, it really reminds Congress of their role in our democracy. And another benefit that maybe is not always evident to folks is that our being on Capitol Hill really helps elevate the work that our government affairs team is doing year round and brings that power of advocacy right into the spotlight where it belongs. Personally, I'll never forget my first lobby meeting back in the summer of 2012. It was with the Energy Legislative Aid for former Texas Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison. Like everyone else, I walked in nervous, heart racing, palms sweating, just really unsure about what was going to happen. But as soon as we got started, just something clicked. Our team was prepared, we were focused and just completely dialed in. And you could just sit back and relax because you knew the other folks on your team sort of had your back and they could answer some tough questions if you couldn't. So that was a really an eye-opening experience for me, and it really set the stage for understanding what it is about building relationships and finding common ground with folks. After Senator Hutchison retired, the aide actually reached out to me to let me know that he was moving to another office in another state, but he wanted to share just how grateful he was for CCL and our approach to democracy. So again, if you haven't been invited yet, I'm personally inviting you. We really want you there. It sends such a statement to have this many people on the Hill all together on a single day. It just reverberates across Capitol Hill. So we'll make sure we get the links in the chat. There we go. They're dropped there. And Flannery, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Ricky. All right, that's what we've got for you this month, everyone. Thank you again to Sandy, Bill for being on the call. Dana, thanks for your wonderful information. Ricky, congratulations again. And thank you all for tuning in to this month's meeting. So we'll say goodbye now with CCL TV, and we'll see you next on July 12th. All right, see you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration.
Like what you hear? Recommend us to your friends and make sure to give us a 5-star rating. It helps us show up on other listeners' feeds. Feel free to pass on any suggestions for future episodes in the comments as well.
And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.